Today, I would like to revisit a few visions that I have had in this fireside episode today titled The Birth from Above, as I have experienced it. In 2013, I had three children. One was just born in 2012, Caleb, who is the youngest. When Caleb was just a year old, I started feeling very sick, mostly tired and fatigued, but also chest pains and restless leg syndrome. So at night, I would get up and walk around to help circulate the blood in my legs. Often Caleb would be crying, and I would be the one to get up and hold him, as I didn't really have that opportunity in the past with my other two children. So, with Caleb being our last planned child, I wanted to spend that time with him, and I loved every bit of it. I loved to hold him, and I will never forget that feeling of holding all of my babies. One night, I jumped from bed hearing a baby crying. I run to Caleb's room, but everything is quiet. I don't sense that he's even awake. As I open his door, I notice he is asleep. He's sound asleep. So I return to my bed. I'm not feeling good, so I stay home from work that day. Towards the evening time, it's Friday now, and the wife and kids are gone to their Bible study group for Sabbath. I had stopped attending that years ago, and I was laying in bed resting as I had no idea that my body had stage 4 cancer at this time. I just felt ill and had lost over 100 pounds, but I was juicing and eating healthy, and I even stopped smoking. As I lay in bed, I had already slept most of the day and was having a hard time falling back asleep. I was in and out of limbo. I remember the dark of my mind and feeling a feeling of being trapped in a body that was failing. When I was in the darkness, I heard a very loud boom. I felt the boom vibrate the base of my skull, and I leaped from my bed yelling, "What the F was that?" I frantically looked around and thought to myself, did the furnace just blow up or backfire? I checked the thermostat and it wasn't even on. The furnace was turned off. So it couldn't have been that. It seemed everything was fine in the house and no bomb had gone off. I was just very confused at the time and couldn't explain it. So I laid back down to rest. And as I entered into my rest, I had a vision, a dream. This dream was very vivid and accompanied that boom. I was in the house in my dream. Then the lights went out. I felt trapped in the darkness. Then the boom happened and I jumped from my bed. Now, when I laid back down after the boom, then I saw this in my vision. First, a fear overcame me and a hand grabbed me by the back of my neck. It felt like claws digging into my neck, and the fear was so incredibly intense that I saw my body laying dead as I had been ripped from my body. I could see the features being enveloped by shadow. A dark shadow figure was all that was remaining, laying there. The body had begun to crack right at the right arm, and light began pouring out. It shone through the shadow being, and the being began to stand up, and more light was pouring out of the cracks as more cracks were forming, until the entire being had shed all of the shadow. Only a being of light remained, dreadful to behold, as the liquid golden light moved and arced, with electrical sounds popping and cracking with a very intense vibration, so intense that dread overcame me. I awoke and recalled the vision as it was very intense. I understood that I am at that point. I knew that was me. After a quick meal, I fell back asleep and saw my body, once again in vision, laying dead on my bed. There were my older brother and my youngest brother. They were both looking at my dead body and talking about how I had passed, but they couldn't see me in the room with them. Then my wife at that time came into the room, saying, "He has passed. What am I to do?" Then a baby starts crying, and she walks over to the corner where the fireplace is and picks up the baby off the floor. I am still staring at the vortices that look like stars on my dead body, in the hands and feet and chest and head. I wonder to myself if they can see that too. And at that moment, I hear the baby crying, and I see my wife picking up the child. As she's holding up the babe, she proclaims, "This is Trevor's baby." My oldest brother says, "How is that possible? It can't be his. He's dead, and you were not pregnant." My youngest brother says, "Look, the baby looks just like Trevor. It has to be his." I then take the child from my wife into my arms, and they all disappear. I'm the only one left there, holding the baby, with that feeling of holding my son, a feeling I find very intense. At that time I had this vision, I had no idea what it meant. I even told my wife at that time that we would have another child together, for I thought that was what the dream meant. Just a few days later, I would fall very ill, and within just a few months, I would find out I had cancer ravaging my body, and I would start treatments the following year. This vision gave me the strength to get treatment. Seeing myself dead, it motivated me to get treated and stay alive for the baby and for my kids. Now, 5 to 6 months later, I have a dream. I'm in the parking lot. It's an old roadside motel, and it's very dark out. As I'm standing in the parking lot, I feel this vibration of intensity, like the wind, and I look up to see tornadoes in the sky. These twisters were turning and twisting, giving me goosebumps. I felt someone coming up behind me. I turned to look, and it was a boy in all white, smiling at me. He looked just like me, a boy 10 to 12 years old. My son came from my lips as he said, "My father," at the very same time, and I knew then, this is my son. And I hugged him, and he hugged me. At that moment of the embrace, we were no longer in that parking lot. Instead, I am now in a bedchamber. Looking from the foot of the bed, I see an old man laying in the bed with white hair and wrinkles. Beside the bed, I see the mother. She is quietly whispering into the old man's ear, "Awake, my love, awake." I see the lady has my features. She looks like a female version of myself. And as I think that, I am now seeing out her eyes. And the boy from the parking lot, he's the one standing at the foot of the bed. And now I am whispering into the ear of the old man saying, "Trevor, Trevor, Trevor, sleep, dream, my love." And I know that is me in that bed as an old man dreaming. And this is my wife, the Holy Spirit, the Holy Mother. This is my son David, showing me the beginning, the start, the place where I began dreaming I was he, and that I became he. I awoke, and I remember every detail at that time. I was confused, but years later I would discover Neville Goddard. Then, only then did these visions make any sense. I now understand what they meant. And just a few months ago, while in meditation, and with this understanding, the dove landed on my shoulder in meditation and cooed and snuggled my ear with love. I felt the confirmation in that moment of complete understanding. I now know this is the very experience of the Holy Spirit, and I absolutely love it. So this vision I call the birth from above that took place. This took place during a period of time where I was becoming very ill with cancer and preceded the diagnosis and the actual treatment. So after getting these visions and going through the treatments, I had found Neville Goddard's work a few years later. And when I was reading through Neville Goddard's work and listening to the lectures, a lot of this was ringing very true with me as an experience that I had just went through a few years ago. So what Neville was saying was ringing very true in me as one having this experience. So even today, I like to listen to Neville Goddard and record some of his lectures for the channel, the ones that I find more important, the ones that I find critical to this understanding. So I wanted to put this all together with my personal experience to relate to some of this Neville Goddard work in a way that I'm hoping that my children will understand someday. That this is a very real experience that we all will go through. And though for each person it will be unique, and as each person is unique and each birth is unique, so will this experience of this birth from above. There are many things that are very similar with the way that Neville Goddard has presented his, as with all that will go through this process, such as the baby crying, the boom, the coming out of the skull and seeing your body. These things are very common in the different testimonies. And really, that is the common thread that we see in the Bible with the Immaculate Conception and all this taking place very, very contemporarily and very personally to you as an individual. So I find the whole thing a very beautiful process. And I just want to relate this experience and document it so that one day my kids can listen to this. And anyone else that wants to hear. I thank you for taking the time to listen to these as I share some of my very personal experiences.